rural community groups and sustainability and everything, I think really film can convey how rural we actually are up here, because it's very different from other areas of rurality.
What have you enjoyed this week while we've been on Egg?
I enjoyed everything really.
So everything. And what have you learned about the Commonwealth?
I learned that there was, I think, 53 countries.
At the sports hall, we won lots of medals, like the gold one on me.
Gold, silver and bronze, trying harder, nations watching on, and we're all in this together.
Today we've been having a shot at interviewing using videos, and it's been fantastic fun. It's quite nerve-wracking to begin with, but as the day's gone on we've all kind of chilled down a bit and we're starting to really enjoy it.
It's going to be fun, and it's going to be good for the juniors as well, so I'm going to hopefully cheer them up to come along and help me if I can't make the last couple of yards.
Becky pulls together all our words and makes us seek a tune to suit the feelings.
I'm going to take it to the Seafarers group, which is funded by the Maritime Trust. On a Friday we have a IT group, and I'm going to take it there and I'm going to get all the fishermen to tell us their stories and put a blog together so we can share it with the world.
There's a lot of work on the economic leveraging of events and say, well, that's going to bring all these business benefits, etc., etc. Lots of work for a variety of people. But in recent years, there's been more work on the kind of wider social and cultural leveraging of an event like that. So, how can you include groups who are actually on the margins of society often at participating in an event, but also having a say around about some of the issues that an event may generate. So that may be around issues of disability, that may be around issues of human rights, that may be around issues about how their communities are structured and how they feel they can or cannot influence policy or have a say. So I guess in terms of the Digital Commonwealth Project, what we tried to do was actually say, well, the Commonwealth Games is a massive event taking place in Scotland, Glasgow in 2014. How can we leverage that event, the hook, the fact that schools were going to be talking about Commonwealth as part of their curriculum, that communities were going to be either involved in other projects related to sport or culture or something round about the Games, and how could we lever that to enable people to participate in a creative project, actually.
Our pulses are rising, the Games are coming, but people are worried about getting to work. Crowds will be large, sports will be many. Everyone will enjoy them, so come one and all.
I've been here that long and I wouldn't leave Brisbane because I find everybody's kind.
We were kind of entering a field at the start of October 2013 where we knew what community media was defined as, and it had some tensions in it with the radio and newspapers and digital publications. But what we were interested in is how you could work with those contexts to create something that was more all over Scotland, so different context, which made it quite difficult but also made it really interesting, because when we started we were probably working with organisations that were defining as community media, but by the end we were working with groups that wanted to learn about digital storytelling, and that kind of process went along with the journey of the Digital Commonwealth Project, because in some cases we couldn't just say it was one type of media, because not one type of media was appropriate for all the groups that we were working with. Some already had skills on how to produce newsletters or short films but maybe didn't know how to get it out, and others probably knew how to work social media but didn't really come up with any interesting content that they'd be kind of happy, confident to use.
Every school's got its own situation, and obviously the teachers have got different experience, the pupils have got different experience, so it was really interesting seeing how they took an idea of Commonwealth and then made it their own and then made all this content.
I've learned that it doesn't matter if you don't win a single medal, it just matters whether you take part.
I have learnt that Thomas, our friend in there, is living in St Lucia, and St Lucia is one of the Commonwealth.
You are on a small island, you are still part of the Commonwealth, and it's magnificent what the older ones have put together to make you all feel the spirit of the Commonwealth.
They really like the idea that they've now got a school internet. You know, they've got a place where people can go and look. So it's very live. It's very real for them. I think ICT is very real for them, almost realer than paper at times.
They very much enjoyed blogging, and they really got a huge kick out of seeing something that they'd written up on a website, and then being able to go home and show their parents and then phone their granny to tell them to go and look on the internet.
For example, with audio work, that was quite common. We had people using easy speak mics that they had, but they didn't really have a purpose for using them. So a lot of the teachers said it gives us a reason to use it. It's given us a project that we can take this, we can go away and experiment with it, we can play with the editing software because you've told us how to do that, and they've just gone with it.
The level of engagement with the kids was fantastic. They really embraced it, and the teachers embraced it as well. Some of them were a bit nervous about it, but they all got behind it and engaged in the 4 elements that we were trying to teach the kids. But the one thing that struck me at the end of the project was just the difference or the divide between the rural and urban schools. Those that were from a more rural background were much more engaged in digital media to start with, so their level of knowledge, their level of engagement was already higher. So our trainers, when they went in, were able to engage much more in in-depth projects and more ambitious projects with them, because partly the nature of the rural schools that they'd had to engage with this much earlier, and the more urban schools were more caught up in policy and fears about safety on the internet for young people, so they were still being caught up in that agenda, where actually those in the rural schools had dealt with it a long time ago.
In the early few sessions with the various groups, what we were really doing was getting them to feel familiar and comfortable around equipment that they were maybe not used to handling. A lot of them were maybe scared of the equipment, and it was just trying to get them to feel like they were empowered to be able to actually tell their own stories in their own means. Not that we weren't there to actually make films about them, but actually they were there to tell their own stories and to record and create these films. It was trying to also impart the knowledge of what it means to be a filmmaker and the kind of ethics that are involved in that, and actually the power that you have in telling stories that will be received kind of in these, especially digital age, in a kind of worldwide platform.
The schools have shared work with other schools and shared it with the parents. They've had events where they've showcased like a whole assembly have got together. They love experimenting with the different kits. It was brilliant going out and working with people to do some training, because it got us first-hand experience of teaching in a different context and adapting, because every project we did was different, and it was nice to go out and see how enthusiastic people were with experimenting with the digital kit.
The point of the Citizen 2014 website and the project that went on during the summer while the Commonwealth Games were actually going on in Glasgow, the point of that was to try and apply some of the lessons that we'd learned during the earlier period of Digital Commonwealth and use them ourselves. So there was a process of partnering up with other people. So there were the Mindwaves organisation, Somewhere Too, who sort of provided the venue that we used as a newsroom for that period. There was First Port, which was a social enterprise incubation unit just across the road from here, and a number of other organisations. And we came together, we created a little community newsroom was the idea. We ran small training workshops at the time, but we were also reporting on things that were going on in the communities around Glasgow, but without looking at sports or events around the Commonwealth Games per se. And we were also trying to apply some of the lessons that we'd learned technology-wise, so that we were reporting using our phones so far as we possibly could. I did a film about a reimagining of Dalmarnock, the area where the games themselves were going on. This was a piece that was being done by architecture students at the University of Edinburgh. And that was the first time that I'd made a film entirely from start to finish, just using my phone. And I was kind of trying to experience what people in the project themselves were experiencing, how they were learning to use media and to be creative and to create content for websites. So that whole period was extremely rewarding, because I was able to see things from the point of view of participants in the project itself.
This is Dunbeath in the extreme northeast of Scotland.
In addition to the community media work that we did across Scotland, we also worked in different areas around the University of West of Scotland's campuses. So it was in Ayrshire, Hamilton, Paisley and Dumfries and Galloway, and we worked with some of the lecturers who were in our School of Creative and Cultural Industries at the time, and we took some of their creative practice out into the community as a sort of alternative to just focusing on social media or digital storytelling or using mobile tools. It was kind of, let's use a creative practice to introduce the notions of digital literacies in the context of different groups. So for instance, we worked with Alzheimer's Scotland, so they were great for providing access to groups in Renfrewshire and Dumfries and Galloway, but we had to be very careful about how we did that sort of thing. So we worked with a songwriter, Robert Maitland, who was doing a Masters at UWS at the time, who had experience in community songwriting.
I just had mentioned the name Nat King Cole, and a voice came out from the back and said, "Have you ever met Nat King Cole?" And obviously I said, "No." I said, "Have you?" And the lady went into a full story of how she'd met Nat King Cole.
We all met a king today. Oh, how he made us smile. Unannounced, he made his entrance, stayed with us a while. With his song.
Just going round the whole group, we're always told we should only live the life in this moment, and very few of us actually do that, but they do it. They do it constantly. They're only living life in that moment and making the most of it. So what we're doing here is we're making a record of that, and we're leaving a legacy of all their thoughts at this time of the Commonwealth Games.
You tend to think of taking part in music as learning to play the guitar or learning to play the piano, whatever. What we were doing was we were asking people to take part in our project and write songs, create their own music. And in a sense, what they're doing then is they're telling their own stories. The value of that for people is obvious. It's a wonderful thing to have your own voice and to have that voice in music in a format that you maybe never imagined yourself being able to engage with. For the staff, we do a lot of community music, participatory arts projects in UWS. A couple of reasons for it. One is that there's a lot of work in that world, right? And people can really, really supplement their income really nicely doing that kind of work. But much more fundamentally than that, I think taking part in community music songwriting gives you something in your own work that you don't get in other ways, because it's not about sitting trying to write a hit or trying to write something that's going to, sell lots of copies, whatever. It's about an act of collaboration, which is very honest and truthful and pure in a way. It's fantastic.
And it was a different way of looking at how you use sort of digital media in that context. And when we released the video, it was out in Dementia Week, so it meant that Alzheimer's Scotland had a short video that was appropriate to talk about the sort of things that they do and help them kind of think about how they tell their stories about the work that they do. And the same goes for we did a creative writing project, so we went across the 4 campuses again and we worked with different groups, and one of the groups was in sheltered accommodation in Rutherglen.
That was a project the school I went to in Aberdeenshire.
We learned to dance with chairs in church and borough halls. The hostess in the cinema used to pull boys off the walls.
This is where I live. I actually live in this sheltered housing complex because my husband is one of the service managers. And it was 6 or 7 people who took part, who I knew to say hello to in the corridors. I knew to mention something about the weather and pass the time of day with. But through the 4 classes that we did to generate some creative writing from them, I learned about their lives, and it gave me an insight into not just who they were as individuals, but the times that they had lived through, the social changes, the upheavals, the wars, the marriages, the social life that Glasgow had in the past, the dance halls and so on and so forth. So it was very moving ultimately for me to be privileged enough for them to feel comfortable to share that, not just with me, but now as their stories go forth into the world with a much wider audience.
It's important that digital technology includes people from all sorts of different areas of society and gives them a chance to tell their stories in that means too. They shouldn't be excluded from these new means, and if they are, these new means are not good enough. And I think that's been an important part of the project, actually, to get people of that sort into digital forums.
It's a thing that professional musicians take for granted. You make some songs, you release them, and people get a chance to hear them. But that other step for people who are participating in music from I suppose an amateur level, or they've never had a chance to do it before, actually getting the chance to see their work up there, either on the internet or in physical form, is amazing.
This dilemma was always happening between the home life and the school life, where in the rural schools it was very much, we want this to be integrated across both home and work life, and in fact that was how that many of the projects were able to be so ambitious because of that, and then some of them internationally had international connections through that. I think absolutely that information is transferable to other projects, and that other people could be using that.
It's important to enable students and staff to be exposed to communities, to groups, to issues and agendas that they perhaps aren't normally engaged to as in their normal practice working in a university, and to use that as an opportunity to develop the university's engagement with its communities, to do something meaningful that develops trust between what we do as a university and what the communities that surround our campuses do, but also actually to do something quite creative and innovative with that, where actually the communities can feel confident to come to the university and say, we want to work with you again, we want to work with the staff, we want to get your students to come out and work with us, and we've got something to offer you and you've got something to offer us. So that reciprocity, really, that there's a reciprocal relationship between an institution of learning and communities in some ways that we may, in many respects, argue that we serve and that we should be interacting with.
As a lecturer, I found it incredibly useful to work with the older community, which wouldn't tend to come through our doors at the university in a degree programme. They had amazing stories to tell and very much interested in the potential that these could have been lost if they weren't captured, and also it's incredibly important that they're captured in their voices and by them as individuals. So I found it incredibly fulfilling as a practitioner to be able to be part of that project in that sense, but also the repercussions of that is one of the groups has set up a kind of group where they're collecting local stories, so the kind of oral narratives and the oral history, and screening them to the younger community. So it's quite good because the older community are being able to tell their stories in a language that's very familiar to the younger community, so it creates a bond in that sense.
Another key feature of the Digital Commonwealth Project was the commitment to partnership and collaboration. You know, we were trying to profess that to the groups that we would work with about how they can network up, how they can generate something more powerful by being part of a larger entity, networking with other people who can help them to achieve certain things. And that was important for what we did. So this project was a partnership between the University of the West of Scotland, the Media Trust, Big Lottery, funding it, but a range of other organisations, others that we'd worked with in the past who were able to make a contribution to this project, including the people who were involved in our training and working with communities, creative practitioners who were able to support that. And I think what that led to is our ability to again lever opportunities that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise as a single entity. And I think there's something there about the practice, about how we do projects, where you can have a learning institution like a university working with those that are able to provide access into communities in a way because they have real credibility in doing that and they have real experience of doing that, and trying to meld those two areas of expertise, because I think that's something that makes what we were able to do much more powerful than we would have been able to do otherwise.
Each one of these groups had their own specific kind of nature, their own specific needs and their own specific challenges. And what we have to do in doing this kind of work is to give people a sense of the joy of creative practice. And so there's an element of negotiation involved in that, and in that negotiation you learn something every time about your own practice, about the limits of your own practice, but also about how possible it is to work with people who maybe are not necessarily, quote, musicians, close quote, and nonetheless produce really powerful, resonant work. And I think if there was an overarching lesson in this project, it was about collaborate with lots of people from lots of different areas and in lots of different ways, and you're often surprised by the results.